Call the meeting to order and have council please approve the agenda. Thank you. Thank you, Councillor Ronsley, and the seconder, Councillor Bain. Any changes, additions, deletions to the agenda? All those in favor? Opposed? Carried unanimously. If I can then go to public participation, Mr. Stone. And under public participation, each person has up to a maximum of 2 minutes. And thank you very much, Councillor Bain, for being the timer and for providing 30 seconds notice. Mr. Stone?
Thank you, Mrs. Brown. I have a couple of questions concerning minutes of meetings. On a number of occasions, minutes are produced. And comments are made by residents. And when those comments are not accurate, we as residents normatively are not recognized and cannot make suggestions to council regarding correction of those minutes. So I would like council to give consideration in the event when minutes are being approved, if a particular resident notices something that's incorrect in their statement, they have an opportunity to bring it to the attention of the council and be recognized for that particular issue. Number two, for Mr. Bain, I finally had a chance to read that emergency plan. You know that book? Mm-hmm. And it's really quite good, but it's all, for the most part, preparatory. And there is also another book that Mr. McLaughlin made available to me that gives the Lions Bay perspective, but it all assumes availability of telephones and cell phones. And as you know, Mr. Bain, during an emergency, even when the phones are working, they're going to be jammed. So my concern is there's a possibility to produce for residents so that they can have handy of what exactly the emergency people, I mean, the plan, not exactly what's the plan that the emergency people will be doing in the beginnings, you know, the first 2 or 3 hours. Because, for example, if someone has an emergency and needs to get some medical attention, what do they do during the emergency when their phones are not working or they can't get through? That's a big concern I think might be useful to have in the community.
Thank you very much, Mr. Stone.
You're welcome.
Yes, Councillor Bain?
Can I respond?
Yes, please.
Your last point there about the plans, we have posted them on the website for the first 48 hours. You can check with that.
The power would be out during the emergency.
No. You check now, print it out. So you
That's
have
not what he's
copy
saying. Listen, that's not what he's saying. I'm on that committee.
No, that's the second point. You're talking about the first point, about the phones.
Okay, Councillor Bain.
Yeah, as far as what you do for your first steps, we have the first steps laid out. They're on the website to print out. It's a PDF document, if I'm not mistaken. That's correct.
That's correct.
I think it's titled First 48 Hours, if I'm not mistaken.
That's correct.
So I would recommend you check with that one. And it addresses the issue that the phones will not probably be working and cell phones will be overcrowded in a disaster.
Maybe council consider distributing that to all the residents, because you know how people are. They leave things and then there's no power, then they don't have access to it. You follow what I'm saying? To distribute something like that so each resident would have it available, because that's going to be a key issue in a big emergency.
Well, could I suggest maybe we do an e-post to everybody who wants it, and anybody who doesn't get one on an e-post, we pick it up at the village office with them.
Through you, Madam Mayor.
Thank you.
The material's on the website. People can download it now and have it ready. If we hand it out now, there's chance, unless it's actually, and we recommend it, actually placed on the refrigerator, chances are it's going to be put in somebody's phone book or put someplace else. So the idea is for people to, to read them and memorize them and understand what's going on. So we can do whatever council wishes, but if we prepare something now, an emergency doesn't happen for many years.
Perhaps, Councillor Bain, your recommendation of putting out an e-post, it's come up, put out an e-post to remind residents that this information is in fact on the website. And it is important that residents take responsibility to familiarize themselves with that first 48 hours.
But only a certain percentage, probably a small percentage of people use electronic, and there are those of us who don't have that. So that's why I'm thinking of it in printed forms.
Can I leave that thought with
Pick
you,
it up.
Councillor Bain, to, yeah, as a,
Okay.
thank you very much. I'm going to move us along then, there being no delegations, and move adoption of the September 2nd minutes of the regular council meeting. Could I have council please move and second? Thank you, Councillor McLaughlin, and a seconder. Councillor Bain, thank you. Any changes, additions, deletions? Thank you very much.
Madam Mayor, on page 6 of 11, which is 8 of 134, action item, it says intern CEO McGrady. The word, the name was public cover property. It should read Holville property.
Oh, thank you very much. This is on the September 2nd.
I'm sorry.
Page 8
Yeah,
of 134.
yeah, that's right, yeah.
Page.
8 of 134.
Oh, page 8. I'm sorry. I was on page 6.
Second to last word, first person.
Got you. Thank you very much. Thank you. And do you have you captured that? Thank you very much. Any other changes or additions, deletions? Councillor Ando?
Page 6 of 134. The very first paragraph. This paragraph is a very short summation of what I said. And so, like residents, when they have an opportunity to speak and they provide a document that contains their remarks and a copy of which is retained by the agenda material, I so too would also like to provide a copy of what I said. If you're going to shrink down what I've said to this small paragraph, and it, in my opinion, doesn't accurately reflect everything that I said, then I'd like this to be included. Please, I'll give it to the recorder.
I'll just bring this to the table, not because of its content, but because there are so many times when we receive information from public participation, from delegations, and just so that, and from council members, so just so that it can be consistent with how we record our minutes. That's all I would say to council, if that's fine with council. Yeah, great. Okay, so if we can move along then, thank you very much, Councillor Ando. Excuse me, I'm recognizing the council at this point. Public participation has passed. So I'm going on to page 8, and just a reminder to maintain decorum during the meeting. Thank you. So if it can go on to page 8, just item 8B, first bullet, if that could be minister of rather than to. And just a question whether or not we've heard back from Minister Todd Stone's office regarding any meeting with them at the UBCM.
We have Minister Stone scheduled to book full, but we've been booked in with the assistant deputy.
Fantastic, thank you very much. Then page 12. At the top, number C, item C, first line, and just the removal of is. And just a query on page 13, bullet 2, line 2, whether that should be, whether that was intended to be 15 or 50 kilometers, and that was under Mr. Stone's report. And whether it was, I know that it was 30 kilometers, but whether it was 15 or 50.
That's part of the minutes that I think are incorrect, and I wanted to make a correction if possible.
Council, if I could just say, yeah, thank you. I see some head nodding, and I would agree. I knew I was getting there. So, Mr. Stone?
Yeah, I think there are two things. You know, Mrs. Brown, you go down that way.
Yes.
There's this very steep curve, and it's posted sign 40 kilometers per hour, and it's impossible to do that. Cars will squeal tires like that. So suggestion was to put a sign there at the curb for suggested speed 15 kilometers or maybe 20, and then change the speed limit on Lions Bay Avenue to 30 kilometers per hour. Plus, at the railway crossing, the problem was the uneven bed, not the fact that there was an all-road crossing sign, but it's the bed for long bedded, low trucks that cross and get stuck. You know about that, Mr. Brown. And there's no signage there, and that's the kind of sign I'm looking for, suggesting. Warning for long, low bedded trucks crossing, because it's not a level crossing.
Okay, there's going to be quite an overview done. So I just want to clarify that, yes, you did mean 15, not 50 there. Thank you. And that's what I thought, but I just wanted to clarify that.
Thank you.
And we've captured those other remarks. Thank you very much. Any other changes, Council? Councillor Ando?
On page 5, so page 7 of 134, on page 5 of the minutes, the second to last paragraph. So, at the invitation of Councillor Delacroix, advised that all the trees were surveyed. So, that statement is incorrect. It is correct, but not all the trees were on the survey. So, how do we ensure that the information that's in our records is accurate of the information?
Is that through the chair to Mr. McGradu? I'll ask Mr. McGradu if he thinks that I should recuse myself at this point, or this question should be put on a later agenda item.
Well, Madam Mayor, the way that these are statements made by a specific individual, if that individual says that they're incorrect, then that has to be dealt with. The issue of whether all the specific item in here is, will be dealt with, I think, at the later on in the agenda.
Okay, yeah. So I'll just move along. If Councillor Ando?
Sorry, going back to the notes that I provided to the recorder, on page 4, I'd like there to be inserted in the minutes that Councillor Ando has since provided the document containing his remarks, a copy which is retained with the agenda material, just like it says with others.
Apologies. Yes?
That's all, thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. And has that been captured? Thank you very much, Ms. Kuntz. Okay, if we can move along then and call question on the motion, all those in favor? Carried unanimously. If we can move along then to move the minutes of the, sorry, I think I'm turning it off. I turned it on again. Nope. Moving the minutes of the public hearing of September 8th, the public hearing on draft bylaw number 475, secondary suites. Could I have council please move and second? Thank you, Councillor Ronsley and Councillor Ando. Any changes, additions, deletions? There being none, call question on the motion. All those in favor? Carried unanimously. Thank you very much. If we can move along then to business arising from the minutes. Yes, Councillor Bain.
Out of the minutes of the September meeting, under correspondence, I was asked to review the ambulance paramedics proposal.
Yes.
And so I downloaded their information from our website, and I never got any staining done in our house today. Oops, sorry. Their proposal was different than what I thought it was. I thought they're going to talk about the issue of reallocation of assets with the cars moving around, but this is something quite a bit different. What they're advocating is community paramedicine, which if I could define as quite loosely, it's the concept of having paramedics available for doing house visits for non-life-threatening injuries as well. Oh, wow. They would set up a paramedicine infrastructure, sort of, if you like, that would be complementary to the existing infrastructure. And I think that is what they're wishing council members would take to the UBCM is their proposals. In their overview, they've basically stated it. For anybody who wants to read it, the summary at the beginning is probably all you really need to read. It can go into great detail, but I can hand that off to you.
If that's okay. And then do they state in their letter what number it is in the resolution package?
No,
They don't?
heard yet.
Okay. They probably aren't aware of what number it is. That there's hundreds of resolutions, but we'll find it. Okay, that's great. Thank you very much. And if council has a particular leaning on that topic, please let me know. And Councillor Ronsley, you and I can certainly review that package. If I can move us along then to unfinished business, to the community centre renovation update, and just actually invite Councillor interim CAO, Grant McGradu, to provide a report.
Okay, Madam Mayor, there will be a written report provided to council, I believe, hopefully later this week. There were a couple of questions that were left with Mr. Longson to speak to the structural engineer. The structural engineer is working on it. He's been away for a couple of days, so the structural engineer will be responding to the two questions that were posed last week. The project is moving along quite nicely. It's still we're still targeting for mid-October, and it's well within the budget that was approved by council. So
Excellent.
it's going well, and specific questions that were posed by council last week will be answered.
Okay, excellent. And we'll look to community centre opening and focus on thanking our many volunteers, but having it as a community-wide invitation event. And really looking at beginning sometime over the next couple of weeks in putting together a small committee to look at what that event might look like. So if I can move us along, Councillor Andrew?
I had made a request for staff to check into the 42,000 of concrete. I wasn't able to find in the detailed summary of work done by the general contractor, and I was wondering if they found any of the information out.
Okay, again through the mayor to Mr. McGradu.
Through you, Madam Mayor, the questions that were asked last week will be answered in Mr. Longson's report.
Oh, excellent. Thank you very much. So that was one of the questions I believe that Councillor Ando had asked for. Is that correct?
Wasn't.
Okay.
So I asked it originally on the 2nd in the council meeting, and then I again sent it by email. That is correct, yes. Thank you.
Thank you very much. If I can go then to 7B, the draft land use master plan update, and perhaps we can begin with an update, and I'll check in with council. So maybe I can just give a brief overview, go to Mr. McGradu, and then come back here and then go to council. But so as each of you know, we don't know exactly the number of people who attended, but it's anybody's guess from anywhere between, I would say, about 170 to 200 attended the meeting last Monday. One of the things to really clarify, and I hope it's helpful for people to know this, is that council is very interested in the community's comments. So please, if you can pass along to others to review the plan and to know that it's got many different parts to it and that it came up. So as much as I think I speak for many of council, if not all of council, that council itself wouldn't know where many of the suggestions have come from, because they came from that original group of 90, and further comments as well. Certainly they included the things that were already in the OCP, but went beyond the borders of that, as they should. Council isn't the one who should be determining the document, but the document's an important document because it will allow us to have a long-term plan sense of the direction that we are enabling possibly going in. The document itself, in terms of when the council reviews it, it will just be a document, whether it's passed in the next little while or a longer while. We might suggest an additional meeting after the consultant presents the feedback from the community, an additional public meeting with the community, because the intent is for the community to be reflected in the document and the community's desire. We have had many different things come before various councils over the last, 20 years, I guess. And without a land use master plan, we keep needing to address each of those as they come. And as I see some of you nodding, some of these have taken a considerable time to be reviewed and et cetera, because we don't know what the community's feelings are. So it's an important time, as one community member said, who I didn't know had worked for a city elsewhere in another province, said each community should have a long-term plan for land use. And so it's not that it's zoning. It won't be determinant of zoning, but it will allow for the possibility of what might happen in that area, but it would come to council first. If that isn't might happen in that area, then it wouldn't be considered, but if it would be, then it would go back to the community and to the neighborhood for consideration. So that's my understanding of the document. So just to clarify, because I know a lot of different questions came up, and was this sort of a document that was something that was being predetermined? And absolutely not. You know, there's as many surprises for council in there as for community members. But it's hard to scratch your head and know. We shouldn't presuppose what one's community is going to think are good ideas and which ones are not. So if I can, pass it on to Mr. McGradu back here and then open it up for council.
To you, Madam Mayor, I think you outlined the issue. Since last week, I've had 7 inquiries asking for various things to be added to the plan, to be adjusted in the plan, to be taken out of the plan. I've suggested to each one of them that we do have that they pose and they asked how to do this, and whether they should send it directly to council, should they send it to me, should they send it to whoever. I've instructed all of them is that we have a process in place, that they should send whatever inquiries, questions, concerns, recommendations directly to the website, as was outlined at the last meeting. I advised them that, they said that they have, people have other questions as well, and I said, well, it'd be almost impossible for us to answer every one of these questions that were posed in front of us. And I said, to be fair to everybody, that's why the website was set up, so that council will have an unfettered ability to read those questions, those comments, prior to council taking any action.
Okay, thank you. If I can then add here and maybe suggest that those emails, just if it's redundant, that's fine, but if those emails could go on to Ms. Kuntz. What I'm doing is, when I'm receiving things, and when I do receive an email from you as a community member, it's my protocol to send it on to the office as well, and to say that that's where it's being sent.
If I may, Madam Mayor, on this particular issue, one of the things I would urge all council members to do, and the public, is we have the website.
Yes.
Send them to the website. So what you would encourage them to do is to forward it to forward it to the website.
Okay, excellent.
That way, hopefully nothing will be lost and everybody has an opportunity to be heard.
Okay, fantastic. Now, is there a specific link that can tie people directly into, from a time-effective perspective?
It's right at the top of our website.
It's right at the top of our website. Okay, that's great. So perhaps what we can do, in the interest of reminder communication, is to send out an e-post with council's permission to remind people that it's September 22nd. It's just that kind of...
Another one?
Yeah.
Another one?
Yeah, I think that it's a time to, if we can, over-communicate, just so that people are aware. Now, one of the things that I just said, so I just want to check in with council, because council may agree, disagree, or whatever, and I'm open to any of those eventualities, but that we have the September 22nd deadline. People will be feeding back. The consultant will be reviewing that. The consultant will then bring that review here. But then subsequent to that, council will be meeting, reviewing that, having a shirt sleeve session, I presume. And then I think subsequent to that, I don't mean it's definitive that we'd have another public meeting, but that we'd at least have another public meeting following that. And so I just want to bring that up with council as a process possibility, so that we can open that up. Councillor McLaughlin?
Thank you, Mayor Broughton. 2 points. One, that it would be fair to say, and the community should be aware, that council is aloof from the process. We're listening, and yeah, you may have an opinion, but that is for the council members, but the council members should remember that they act on behalf of all of the community, and it's a little hard to figure out exactly what all the community, their viewpoint is, because the data is not in. Secondly, the project consultants are running the show, and you know, to expect that council members or council or staff are going to respond to every question that comes across is simply not logistically possible.
No, it isn't.
And also there's the weighting of the importance of the questions too. So I think where I'm going with this is that however the data comes in circa the 22nd of September, that will go to the project consultants and staff to disseminate. And ultimately when they're ready, then it would come forward to council. Yes. And I think that's a key piece, because as you know, we don't determine their work, they determine our work.
Yes, absolutely.
So to me, I'm not predisposed on a date for this. It'll occur when it occurs, and I'm certainly of the view that whether I can't imagine there's unanimity on this, that certainly another public meeting would be in order.
Any, yes, Councillor Ronsley?
I'd like to piggyback on Councillor, Madam Mayor, I'd like to piggyback on Councillor McLaughlin's comments, which we have not rehearsed together. That document is indeed a document. It is not an authoritative statement by council. It has yet to be reviewed by this council and perhaps fine-tuned, and whatever council decides to do it. So it's my desire, in addition to that, that council go through that document very clearly and very carefully. We did not write it, it was written. We did not write it, it was written. It is written by somebody who was authorized to do this by this council. However, it has not been adopted by the council, as far as I'm aware, as this is what we're going to do. And so it's my desire that that council carefully scrutinize that document, every word of it, and decide, yes, this is what we think. No, this should maybe say a different way. Perhaps this shouldn't be in the document at all. And that's our job. And I see that as the next step before anything is gone out to the community, is that this is the plan for the next 5 years. It's somewhat, if I could use this rather somewhat analogy, we have a 5-year plan as far as expenditures are concerned, a business plan, how we're going to spend our money, our income for the next 5 years. That's a plan. It guides us, but in fact, it is not carved in stone. It is reviewed next year and the year after and so forth, and there's another year added on to it, and this is somewhat in that same vein. So it's my hope that as a council, it will be carefully reviewed before any authority or acceptance is given, and then council, as a group, will say, this is where we are, and that will be the plan, at least for the future. So I hope that's understood. I think it is by us that it was authorized, and it was intended to do what it did, but the crossing of the T's and the inclusion of some details and the omission perhaps of others, perhaps have to, I hope, is the hope that they will be refined, reviewed, reiterated, eliminated, embellished, whatever they need to make it exactly what this council believes it should be for the future. And once again, once it's accepted, I do believe it is a plan. It is not an authority to go forward to do anything without the approval of the citizens of Lions Bay. It's merely a plan to react to. So that's all I have to say.
Thank you very much, Councillor Ronsley. Anything further? I know I have Mr. McGradu.
Madam Mayor, without going into
Sure.
a lot of detail, the plan procedure was outlined. We went out for tenders. They responded. Council received and approved their timeline,
Yes.
as well as the process upon which they are moving forward with. They're following the process. I can tell
They
you
are.
the consultants are a little concerned about how long this is taking.
Okay.
So one of the items within the process is that it'll come back to council. Before you decide to have a second meeting,
Yeah.
third meeting, fourth meeting, or
Yeah.
even refer it to a future council meeting, it's suggested within the document that you review the public comments and then determine what the next steps would be.
Excellent.
The cost that council approved, if there's going to be additional meetings or whatever, will be additional costs to the municipality. Council has complete control of whether you adopt any of the recommendations or none of them over what period of time. So at this point in time, you do need to review the
Yeah, and have a shared
submissions.
space session. Okay, thank you very much. Okay, I'm going to move on, and then I'm going to go to item 7C, but I'll invite Councillor Bain to the chair, if I may. And I'll recuse myself because I am a part owner of the Lions Bay General Store Cafe. Councillor Bain, would you, oh, you're going to remain there? Just wait until I'm out and door closed, if you could. Thank you.
With the door closed. Okay, thank you.
Okay, item 7C is the tree cutting on Isleview Place. We have an update, and Monsieur, if you would like to address it.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, what I would like to do is perhaps read this, and the reason that it's on the table is that items are still being discussed with the surveyors. I'm still having discussions with possible arborists. I was having discussions with a number of different people as late as probably 6:30 tonight, or about 6 o'clock tonight. So if you would allow me to read it, and then we'll be able to I guess, take the next steps. Background. On March 28th and again on April 1st and or 2nd, 2013, trees were cut on land purported to be private land with the owner's permission. Following the trees being cut, the village received complaints and questions regarding the cutting of the trees, including the following: who cut the trees? Was there a permit issued? Whose land were the trees located on? In addition, concerns were expressed that the cutting of the trees may cause the bank to become unstable. The trees were cut by Steve's Trees at the request of Strata BC S815, and the tree company engaged by Dr. Broughton to cut trees on private property. For a period of time, the village was advised both verbally and in writing that the cut trees were on private property. To confirm that the trees were cut on private property, the interim requested Dr. Broughton to have a survey undertaken to show the location of the cut trees. This matter has and has continued to consume far too much of everyone's time and patience, and I'm acting on the belief that some conclusion must quickly be reached. On Wednesday, September 10th, 2014, last week, the interim CIO contacted Chapman Land Surveying Limited and asked specific questions and clarification of the survey. I was advised that the company spent approximately 3 hours of unbillable time answering numerous questions from people who they believe were residents of Lions Bay, who wanted information on the survey undertaken by Dr. Broughton. Mr. Hickman, who's one of the co-owners of the company, was prepared to do this because he wanted to ensure that everyone had accurate information and understood the survey. Chapman Land Surveying Limited completed a survey dated May 6, 2014, which showed all trees that were cut close to the eastern property line. All trees that were cut on the easterly side of the property were on private property except 2 trees. One is a fir tree with a diameter of 0.8 feet, which is approximately 10 inches, which according to Mr. Chapman, who is the owner of the company, a co-owner company, is 0.2 feet on private land and 0.6 feet on public land. And 2, a maple with a diameter of 10 inches, which according to Mr. Chapman is 0.5 feet on private land and 0.3 feet on public land. Bylaw 393, tree bylaw, requires a tree permit where, and they identify which trees have a different requirement, but these 2 trees are greater than 20 centimeters when measured 1.4 meters above natural grade. These 2 trees measure 0.8 feet or 24.3 centimeters at approximately 1.4 meters from the base of the trunk. The determination of natural grade on the steep slope is difficult. There are 2 trees that straddle the property line and have diameters that could be 4.3 centimeters higher than is permitted by the tree bylaw. But at this point, I am able to determine emphatically where the natural slope is located. The trees are, according to Mr. Hickman, the trees are approximately 15 to 20 years old. He's assuming that the land could be considered to be where the natural slope is. However, over the last 15 to 20 years, nobody is sure whether in fact there's additional sediment that's landed on top of the trees. So where the exact 1.4 meters is going to be calculated, and obviously, depending on the height of the bottom of the tree or where you locate on the bottom of the tree, the narrower it's going to be up top. So when I say it's 4.3 centimeters higher, that is a pretty good guesstimate. But again, it's a guesstimate at this point in time. In an email dated September 9th, Mr. Bordeaux, Operations Maintenance and Rehabilitation Technician for the House on Sunshine Coast, advised that no trees were cut on Ministry of Transportation land. I've contacted and have spoken with the surveyors. The lands, there is no highway land adjacent to Isleview Place on the west side. On the east side of Isleview Place is MOT land. On the south side of the Poleville property is an unopened road that is very steep. On September 16th, I met with Mr. Hickman, that was today, and surveyors with Chapman Land Surveyors, and walked the east property line of the subject property to look at the southern property line. There were numerous trees cut on what is a dedicated but unopened road. At least 5 trees were flagged by some unknown people. I engaged Chapman Surveying to survey a number of trees to determine their location as well as their diameter. I engaged Chapman, various trees were visibly checked and compared to the trees that were flagged on the private property and cut on March 28th and April 1st and or 2nd. The cuts to the stumps on some trees appear to be quite weathered as compared to the newly cut trees, and it is impossible for the surveyors or me to determine when these trees were actually cut. I've spoken to Dr. Broughton and requested that he contact Steve's Trees to ask if they would come to the site to view the survey and provide a written response if the company cut these certain trees that will be shown on the new survey, and if so, to note when these trees were cut, if they did cut them, or if they didn't cut them. It's my understanding that Dr. Broughton has made attempts to contact Steve's Trees. The survey will most likely be completed and submitted to the village later this week. So the summary that I've been able to determine at this time is that the 2 trees on the easterly side of the private property on the property line, and depending where the natural grade is actually determined, the fir and maple are within, if my calculations are correct, 2.126 inches of being permitted to be cut without a permit. That's 2.126 inches. There are numerous trees that have been cut on the southerly slope of the unopened road right-of-way. The challenge will be to determine when and by whom these trees were cut. As mentioned, some trees appear to have been more exposed to the elements than the trees cut on the easterly side. I've made calls to 4 arborists and tree companies, asking if an arborist will be able to determine when the trees were cut and the cost to have this work undertaken. The possible cost to determine this will range from $200 to $500 depending on various factors. Hopefully, Steve's Trees will be able to confirm whether they cut the trees on the unopened road and when, or confirm they did not.
Excuse me. So it appears from your report then we have 2 separate issues, 2 separate looking issues. We've got the east side issue and the south side issue. So as far as the south side one, we'll have to put that on hold, I presume, until the surveys come in and a report from Steve's Trees.
Mr. Mayor, I believe that that's what we can do. I understand that that Dr. Broughton, and he's in the audience, has attempted to contact them. I've asked for confirmation in writing by Steve's Trees that they did not cut those trees, or if they did, when did they cut them?
Okay.
Because as I said, we don't know at what point in time they were cut.
Okay. So that leaves us the east side issue. And how would I put this? We have 2 trees out of many that were cut that are so close that I'm in the mind myself, and I'll put it to the rest of council if we could just vote on it. Do we find 2.126 inches into municipal land worthy to cite somebody for a violation of the bylaw? Councillor McConaughey.
Thank you, Acting Mayor Bain. Given that what we're talking about is approximately the thickness of the water bottle in front of Councillor Ando to give a real light to what we're talking about, and this is not clear-cut logging that goes 40 yards off the target line and clear-cuts a swath, I'm of the view that if this was the case, it was an accidental enough or close enough to that a reasonable person who may have been working for 3 hours at a steep slope did what they thought was the right thing, and that there was really no offense here.
If I may just conclude, those 2 trees were not cut down, they were trimmed.
Right. Any other comments from council? Councillor Rando.
Have you contacted Steve's Trees yourself, or I don't understand why you're going through Dr. Broughton to contact when you went directly to Chapman's? Are you going directly to Steve's Trees and asking for that information?
Through you, Mr. Chair,
For the
Mr.
southern
Mayor.
trees.
My intent was to allow Dr. Broughton an opportunity because he engaged the company. If I haven't heard back from them tomorrow or tonight or whenever they are and get it in writing, whether I will attempt to contact them myself. There's only a certain number of hours in the day. What I've asked for is a written confirmation from Steve's Trees on what happened.
Okay, that pardon me, that is issue 2 for the southerly ones?
I apologize.
Okay, no problem. So do we have any further comments on the easterly trees? No. I don't know if we should put it to a vote. My belief is that the trees are so close that if we can do this without prejudice for any other situation, it seems to me, from my perspective, that this has been a bit of an oversight and not an intentional violation of the bylaw. I'm very cautious about it because I don't want to send anybody the message that you can go onto municipal property and hack down a tree and then ask for forgiveness later. I think there's got to be consequences. But I don't think that's what I read from the report here, and when I see how far the tree is in onto municipal property, I really don't believe that's what happened here. And so I think this council, in my opinion, could show forgiveness of this hair-splitting infraction, if I could call it that.
I'd support a motion.
I do too.
I would need a bit of help with the wording on this because I don't want to set, again, I don't want to set a precedent that somebody's going to get the wrong idea. But in this case only, without prejudice, if we could move to, what's the proper word here? extend grace to DCS 815 on this borderline dispute?
Mr. Mayor, perhaps if that's what council wishes to do, is to, and I'm thinking on the fly here, is that the council accept that the fir and the maple tree on the straddling the east property line of Isleview Place, and then I'll give you the actual legal description, not require a tree permit. Or without prejudice, not require a tree permit, if that's what council wants.
That's according to what I'm leaning
Okay.
towards. Any comment on it? Councilor Rando?
So, in other situations where people ask for permission first before they cut trees that they think might be on village property, then we require them to go out and spend the money to pay for a survey that determines that the trees are on municipal property, and then the municipality will make a determination whether or not they can cut the trees, having gotten the permission or having canvassed the neighbors and seeing whether there's any opposition to having those trees topped. That's my understanding of how the process works. And so in this case, the trees were cut, and now we're after the fact, we're having to deal with it, and I think it's sending a terrible message, and it's setting a bad precedent that, well, it's only 4.3 centimeters or 2.126 inches. Well, tree only grows so much a year. How many years is that? Somebody who, when the bylaw was passed, we determined what the size was, we set the rules. I'm worried that you're opening up Pandora's box, you're opening up the door, so I would be opposed to allowing this to go through. I think that we need to uphold our bylaws. I mean, where's the slippery slope?
Councilor Ronson?
I support your concern and the possible message that we're sending, and I don't believe it's appropriate to send such a message. Beg forgiveness. I don't. For me, that's not what I see here. I see an interpretation that was not intentionally used as a crutch to get a job done. Hindsight's very smart, okay? I do know that tree bylaw very well. I have visited that property. The only time in my council history that I've knocked on a door unannounced on a Saturday morning or something, early, with apologies, because I felt it was so very important. But having said that, Councilor Ando, I think everything we have is written in black and white is up for understanding or interpretation. It's not yes, okay, it is really. And I know that bylaw very well, and I've served on the tree committee, and I was in on the writing of the bylaw. I did not have a hand in it, but I was very close to it. So I share your concern that perhaps this is sending a wrong message. May I just finish, please? However, on that basis, I feel it's defensible to say we have really researched this. There is not evidence that it was done with intention. No, this is not a precedent. Absolutely not. But I would prefer to, if there is an error, and I don't believe there is, in going for a greater, what really putting this behind it now, having done an unquestionable amount of research and spent an unquestionable amount of unprejudiced undertaking to find out. And nobody was given any preference that I know of by this council for one position or another. So on that basis, I have a degree, quite a big degree, of comfort in supporting putting it to rest and going on from there. I think everybody is better for that, including everybody.
Councilor Wheeler?
So, in my opinion, by separating the eastern trees and the southern trees is not, I think you need to look at it in its entirety. If you look at it separately, then yes, maybe this was a mistake. If there was no southern trees, should the southern trees have been cut, and should they be outside of the private property and on our roadway? There are 5 trees that aren't a simple mistake. I mean, they're probably 30, 40 feet from the southern property line, one of the trees in particular. And so if you look at them severally, apart, I don't think that you're doing the issue justice in making a decision that while the eastern trees are okay, provided that we don't take into account that the southern trees are in this at the moment. But the trees were cut in 2 cuttings. And I think that without question that they knew that those trees, if it's proven that they were on the roadway and not on private property, that was a deliberate attempt or a deliberate cutting of those trees, which is wrong. That they should have known that when you're 30 feet off the property line, that it's too far. 5 or 6 inches, you could beg forgiveness. But that distance, to me, seems substantial for it to be something that we can turn a blind eye to. But that's my opinion.
Mr. McBride?
Mr. Mayor, maybe this is a rhetorical question, but do you know why zoning bylaws are so thick? Because every time you pass a regulation, somebody finds a way to get around it. And so therefore, most municipalities will then have to pass another regulation to patch up that hole. That's why they have tax lawyers too, because they find ways around tax regulations. And that's been one of the frustrations, I think, of any government, is that people find ways around regulations. What's happened here, in my opinion, was that a survey should have been undertaken beforehand. I've had a call from a gentleman that I was disappointed with, who said, I'm just going to go cut some trees and let you come chase me. And I think there's a big difference between somebody who is actively flaunting the law or is actively trying to get away with something that is wrong. Somebody that is saying, okay, I did make a mistake. There are people in business, some developers, that choose to pay penalties just as a matter of business, the cost of doing business. And unless there is severe penalties, they're going to continue doing it. So that's why, where I worked previously, we issued stop work orders on developers, because that hurt them more than a financial penalty. What's happening on this particular one is that I think there are 2 areas. One is that if the trees are proven to be cut by Steve's Trees at this time on the southerly portion, then there is a flagrant abuse of the bylaw, and they should be fined according to the bylaw. I think 2 inches or less than 2 inches, when even that is questionable, I think is something you're going to have to take a look at. I don't disagree that you should look at it as a holistic cutting, but we don't know at this point in time whether in fact the trees in the southern portion were cut. That will be determined hopefully very soon.
Okay. Any other comments, or?
I'd just like to thank interim CAO McRabbit for writing this detailed report, because I think this would have clarified a lot of things a lot sooner had he gone to the site and looked. And I understand that he was taking verbal and written information by a respected resident of our community, but I really appreciate that he did the time and put this report out, and I know it might have been difficult, but I respect him for that.
So, Mr. Mayor, there is a motion on the floor on the easterly portion. You know, you can either pass it, defeat it, table it, whatever. It's my intention to try to get to a solution on the southerly portion. The reason this has taken a little while is that I've had to get information from the Ministry of Transportation and Highways. They've had to go and look at their maps. It's a tough call. I think the telephone call that I received earlier last week, I guess it was very disappointing. But
okay. Well, just a couple of comments, if I could offer them, is I believe quite strongly when there's a violation of the law, we should come down very firmly on it, especially if it's a flagrant violation. And leniency, I don't think, goes very far in that case. I think we have to put our heads together in wisdom and try to determine, was there an intentional mistake here? Was it a flagrant violation, or was it a mistake that happened to happen? I'm of the opinion it was more the latter on the east side. I don't know about the south side, so I favor separating them out. But if it's on the south side and there's a flagrant violation, then the penalties of the bylaw would kick in and we would deal with that accordingly. The other issue I find interesting is that if this village is going to go and send somebody a fine for something, it better be rock solid. And I don't think I want to waste lawyers' time going into cases that we may or may not win. I would like to be sure that we're going to win them. I'm not confident we could win a case in court with 2.126 inches of violation, but if somebody's 40 feet off, I think that's a much easier case to win. So I would, again, prefer to separate them out so that we have no gray areas here. Just some last comments. If I can ask the order, you can read out the resolution if you've got it.
Well, that's being researched. I just want to make clear that the trees that I've asked the Chapman Engineering to survey, there are a number of trees there, still have to be determined whether the diameter is over 20 centimeters.
Right.
So, and so that's, and I'm not sure, the only thing we can do is at the base, but you actually are supposed to measure them at 1.4. So I may need to get an arborist here anyways to determine what at 1.4 natural grade the diameter of that tree would have been. Right. Unless they're there, we can actually match up the trunk with the, so
right.
There's still some more work that we have to do.
But we can deal with the east side for now, and then we'll wait for further
If you wish, yes. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
The motion on the floor is that council accept that the fir and maple trees straddling the east property line by Aldi Place not require a tree permit on a without prejudice basis.
I put forward the motion.
Moved by Councillor McLaughlin. Seconded?
I'll second that.
Seconded by Councillor Ronsley. So the question, all those in favor? All those against?
I'm going to abstain.
Abstain.
Okay.
Take note.
Mr. Mayor, what I will commit to do now is that if I haven't heard from Steve Streets by tomorrow noon, or tomorrow, hopefully by noon, I will contact them directly, and I will continue to contact them until they speak with me or provide me with that written. And I know that Dr. Brown has requested that information. I was hoping we could get it tonight. The other item is then determining the diameter, and the survey may be ready tomorrow afternoon, but most likely Thursday.
Good, thank you. So maybe call the mayor back in? You go. Okay, thank you.
While we're waiting, can I ask one question? Where is the waterway? Where's Harvey Creek on this map?
I was told that highways acquired land about 100 feet from the property line. It's approximately about 100 and some feet from here. So I can find that out for you, but I don't know that off the top of my head. I actually think I don't know.
Thank you.
Thank you.
You have one title.
Oh, give me a break. Oh, sorry, what's that again?
Big difference.
Oh, 2014, oh, sorry, yeah, okay. You're right.
2013 and 2014.
You're right, okay.
Trust me.
Thank you very much, Councillor Bain. If we can then continue and move on to reports. If I can ask Council to please move receipt of the reports. Councillor Ronsley and Councillor Bain, thank you very much. All those in favor of receipt? Carried unanimously. If we can go on then to the on-table interim CAO, Mr. McGradu's report. Mr. McGradu?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Excuse me. The first one that was questioned that I'm going to respond to is the 140 Lions Bay Avenue cutting permit number 48. The permit was issued and the trees were taken down. The original comments were when it was the neighbors were surveyed were that they were going to be trimmed. The recommendation or the comment by the tree committee is that they should actually be cut down. What and you can see the picture of the two stumps there. I believe the complaint was why wasn't the neighborhood re-canvassed, and I think the comment that I made is that you know, as we've discovered, and in my opinion, when I first got here, the tree bylaw does need overhauling. I think West Vancouver has a very good bylaw, and I'll be bringing that forward as soon as possible. Now, I understand the question that was posed last week is, could these two stumps be cut right to ground level, and then either revegetated or something put so that the stumps are not shown. We could ask the property or the resident to do that. The municipality could go in there and cut down there and revegetate it. This is on municipal property, or they can be left as it is. So that's really up to council. But I know that it's my understanding. I shouldn't say I know, but it's my understanding that the person who came last week wanted that would be pleased with, would be satisfied with that. I should say pleased and satisfied. The second item is the query regarding the notification of September 2nd, 2014 council meeting. The staff posted the agenda in the village post office the afternoon of Friday, August 29th, as per the procedure bylaw. Regarding CN rail maintenance, I sent out an email on September 9th asking about when the preventative maintenance within the village and along the right-of-way would be undertaken. I have not received a response. However, you and I did meet with CN representatives yesterday on another matter, and we asked them if they could find out for this. We were advised that this is done at a national level, and she will attempt to find out when the maintenance will be undertaken in Lions Bay, and advises. The query regarding the community center project, the question was posed, and I won't need to go into it, but I think I've just responded on which is stated in page in the 340-page community center renewal report. The query regarding rescinding of third reading, the question was asked and answered previously on May 8th, 2014, and I won't go into and the person who queried this was advised of that at that point in time. The query of the September 3rd Minutes. The minutes of this meeting were approved by council on September 17th, 2013. The query regarding legal rights, or legal fees, I should say. These fees have been invoiced for labor relations and other privileged client solicitor issues. Other invoices involve questions that relate to various matters which impact the efficient operations of the village. Other legal fees have been invoiced for information seeking advice on the growing number of Freedom of Information requests and residents' complaints to the Office of Ombudsperson and the Office of the Information and Privacy Commissioner, who has upheld recent decisions to the village with respect to information requests.
Can I open it up to any questions by council? The only query that I'd have that I think you're seeking some direction on, or that's what I think I heard you seek some direction, just on the first item, 140 Lions Bay Avenue, and the request to by the resident to have that to have
Either gardened or cut.
yeah. So can we leave that with the tree committee or with yourself, Mr. McGradu? Is there any objection to
Well,
that?
I think the issue is whether the village approach the resident or the village undertakes beautification or trimming this down. And the CAO is asking for direction on that.
That's right. Councillor Bain?
My first choice would be go back to the resident who asked for the trees to be done and ask them to complete it with a stump grinding and then revegetating the area.
Okay, just stump grinding or to cut the stump at ground level?
Well, stump grinding would be better because then you get it as nice and neat and tidy.
Okay.
Whereas it coming with a chainsaw, it's
Okay, I just need to be clear that if you're gonna ask, or if you want us to ask, then it'd be stump. If that's council's direction, we'll ask for stump grinding.
That would be my preference.
Yeah. I think that if Mr. McGradu checked in with maybe the resident who came before us, they might suggest either of those things, but possibly the actual simple cutting might be a suggestion. But may I suggest too that if there is replanting, that the replanting be done in such a way that we did with the tree planting at the end of the north end of Lions Bay Avenue, where this is in the 1990s, I guess, but we requested that those trees be maintained at 20 feet high maximum, and they are by the homeowner that planted the trees on the opposite side of their property, so that it doesn't impair. At any rate, it's just something that was done previously. So, yes, Councillor McLaughlin?
Not to be controversial, but certainly I believe from the tree committee's perspective, and they're not here for me to canvass them, but I would have thought that given what this tree looked like in the cleanup, which was extremely extensive, that this is actually a pretty good cleanup job. And the fact that a resident along the area doesn't like it is, again, pits two residents against each other. And let's say that interim CAO McGrady was unsuccessful in his endeavor with the resident who cut the trees, and we're back here again asking what to do with us to satisfy the complainant resident. So I guess we'll leave that for the interim CAO in his day to sort that out. But I'm wondering if there's guidance from council that I can take back to the tree committee that, again, when I looked like a pretty clean cut to me. Are we asking our residents to do more if they get an approved cut? Because I certainly would like to see this come back again at another location.
If I may, and I have not spoken to the resident that came before us last time, but I did have reason to listen to somebody who works for them, and I don't have an official reason to believe that a simple cut would be accepted, but I'm just asking Mr. McGradu if he could, with council's blessing, just check in with that resident. It
Okay.
was a one-sided conversation. I was the listener, and so
Well, Madam Mayor, actually, that raises a
yeah.
More
the
and more.
question.
Yeah.
Trees, dogs, and
Well, there could be
parking.
2 applications in tomorrow.
Uh-huh.
So,
I see what you're saying.
so in the revised tree bylaw, I guess the question the council will have to determine is that if trees are cut on public property, what level of cleanup do you wish? Do you want the root grinding? Do you want and revegetation? Or so I guess that will require us to come back with some suggestions.
I think a phone call might be a good idea because I think that the concerned resident might be interested in doing the revegetating. I hear your query, but I think a follow-up phone call might clarify things as to what the resident themselves wishes to do.
If I may, if I could back off of my original statement so as not to tie your hands on it, if you could just negotiate the best case for the neighborhood there, that would be fine.
Yeah, I think that there's a willingness for the if I can say this, is I think there's an interest on the concerned residents' part to perhaps garner some involved.
Madam Mayor, the problem that you're
Yeah.
placing is that you've got one resident who doesn't like what another resident did, and that becomes problematic. If in fact we are going to canvass the neighborhood, then maybe that's what I should be doing, is canvassing the neighborhood about what the neighborhood would like. Because the challenge is going to be is that one neighbor may not like what another neighbor does, or the neighbor beside them may not agree. So that's why the bylaw will need to be clear
that.
on what
The rules
means
of order.
when you cut a tree in Lions Bay, how do you leave it?
Yeah. If I can respond, and then Councillor Ando, I'll defer to that, just because I know there was an earlier issue that came up earlier this summer where through my lens it looked fantastic and through a neighbor's lens it didn't. So it was something that looked like an improvement, but actually I didn't realize that it created an impediment. I knew nothing about it.
Yeah, I'll see what I can
Yeah,
do.
so I think that you're right in guiding us in that way. Councillor Ando?
I think this one has some unique situations in that what was asked for was a topping, and what was recommended by the tree committee was that it be cut down, and the communication got lost to the residents that when they were canvassed, it was topping, and then it changed. So I think that that's a difference in this situation.
Okay. Councillor Ronsley?
This is very complex. Regarding our bylaw, it does mention topping, and it was written, I think, in 2002, and should be revised, but the intent of the bylaw at the time was to top those trees that had already been topped, because once you start, you can't stop, but to I think it's important to be aware that topping is not an approved method of controlling of trees. So there, if you're selecting trees again, in terms of what do you select, and boy, we're getting very, very complicated. Mm-hmm. You can't select trees that are going to be topped, because that's not approved anywhere as a solution to tree maintenance anymore. That's old stuff. So we got to select the trees carefully and then maintain them, window them, and things like that. So you've got a huge undertaking, Mr. Radu, with a bylaw that probably will be reviewed and edited. However, what are you going to do if there are 10 people on the street, given I don't know how many there are, and 5 want one kind of resolution and 5 want another? I mean, very complicated. I wish you very good luck on this one. I don't know the answer.
If I can then, through that, and I'm just going to contain this discussion to the table, but Councillor McLaughlin sits on the tree committee. Mr. McGradu has inputted about the review. But if we can leave it with you, is that
Absolutely.
comfortable? I mean, the expertise there. If I can move us along then, is that fine to the mayor and council's report? And just beginning with my report, it's pretty straightforward, but just want to advise that as council had asked me to do, I have moved forward in just looking at what our approach would be for seeking public lands from the province for public use, not for development use, but public use. There's two different categories. And so I've moved ahead with that, and I've been working with through the summer, and then again more recently. And more recently it's been with Counter BC. And then also Mr. McGradu and Councillor Ronsley will join me at the UBCM in meeting with Minister Stevens Minister Steve Thompson to discuss this matter. So I think that that's mostly it. Mr. McGradu and I had a bit of a tour of the North Magnesia area, and I think that that was very informative, and are working with other jurisdictions in that regard. And that's the end of my report at this time, but many things are always concurrently occurring. Councillor Ronsley, thank you, and thank you to Nikki Hogland as well, of the Public Works Manager, for joining together with myself today to attend the Zero Waste Conference at Metro Vancouver, and it was truly stimulating and will help us move from today to tomorrow in that area. It was truly an outstanding conference. So thank you, Councillor Ronsley, and if there's no questions, I'll move forward to, I normally go forward to Councillor Ronsley. I don't see a report in our package, so I'll do it in alphabetical order if I may. Councillor Ando.
As most of you know about the teacher strike,
Yes.
Tentatively been resolved, but
Yeah.
the issue that I bring to you is that it's been rumored, and it hasn't been confirmed until they start school, that the school is going to go to it's going to 2 divisions, but the 2 divisions are going to be split K1
Yes.
and a 1, 2, 3. And many of the parents of the kids are opposed to the 1, 2, 3 split. And so I just let the community know that that's the direction that the school is going. The reason is that they're leaving spots available for people to come to the school, but the parents are opposed because they believe that our children will suffer, being that it's a K1, 2, 3. 3 grade splits can work, and that's without question, and there are some good things about working cooperatively, but our school already does that. And so we don't believe that there's a benefit to doing that, and that it's adversely affecting the kids that are in 2, 3. So I guess make you aware if that's what's going on.
Okay. If I can input in this area in a couple of ways. One, that I know that all of council stands behind this statement, that we are really in support of the council. Mr. McGradu and I met with Dave Everwin this summer in July before one of our meetings, who's the assistant superintendent, and with a confirmation that we'll continue to have meetings to really be proactive and to move the school forward and hopefully encourage that. On a personal note, I'll say this: my eldest daughter attended a 1, 2, 3 that was provided from Glen Eagles in the then St. Monica's Church, which was just at that time by Glen Eagles. And it was, and family groupings, what I've noticed is the term family groupings has started to come back in education. I also thought it was going to be a K1 2, 3. So I thought that that was the grouping. So that's new information that they'd be K1, 1, 2, 3. What I'm recognizing is that in the alternate programs that have sprung up during the strike, just for your information, I have grandchildren who are 4 years apart in the same grouping, and they're being taught math and social projects and English projects concurrently in a very high level program in the month of September this 2014. And again, it was that concept of family grouping. So I'm not trying to market it, but I want to support people staying in the school, because it's paradoxical. If people leave the school, it's going to be like a domino effect. And so one, to just say my eldest daughter had a very enriched experience in the 1, 2, 3. It wasn't selected on high performance. That's what you need to hear, because I know that it's very hard for people, because every child's at a different level. So sometimes the family grouping can give that child who's got a few things to learn an extra start as well. So, but to enrich the upper end. So we'll support the school, I know, and this is going back to my original statement. I know that council stands behind supporting the school in whatever ways. Right now I've asked different community members who might be concerned in one way or another to say, let us know what you need support in, and I understand some of the support is for additional support for the kids. And so we'll certainly take that message forward if that's in fact a gap that's there. But the biggest thing is to really, all of us, understand what a fine school it is. And I've had the privilege of going to the graduations year over year, and the Lions Bay kids from that school perform at a disproportionate rate in terms of whether it's at a social or a sports or scholastic level, at Rockridge, at Sentinel, pardon me, and we rarely are at West Van High. So I just want to say that it's a phenomenal start, and the executive skills that the kids get from that school are just profound. Some of you have been involved in homeschooling, which is a multi-level experience, that family grouping as well. So if I can just say that to you, you've got our full support. You're welcome. Thank you very much for bringing that forward, because it is a change in what we've heard. Councillor Bain? Okay, thank you. Councillor McLaughlin? Okay, Councillor Ronsley?
Nothing in addition.
Okay, thank you very much. Mr. Suvarna, I see your report. It's been received, but to just give you the opportunity, is there anything that you would like to report?
Nothing more than what I have written there. It's basically an overview to the council in terms of 2015 budget process, both capital and then that will actually pave the way for creating the 5-year financial plan 2015 to 19. So I thought actually I will highlight with the council information how we will be, what kind of process we will be following this year, make it as transparent and open as possible, involve the managers in the whole budget process, so, and also try to determine the service levels and the cost of providing those service levels to get the maximum value. So in this regard, basically I see two major players. One is our public works manager, and second is of course the administrative managers as well. So those are the two largest departments, and of course fire and rescue as well. So that was the intent of this report, trying to give you an idea of what the process is going to be and what the timeline is going to be. We have our 5-year financial plan has to go to the ministry in May, by May 16th, I think. So I've sort of tried to work backwards. But the first step is obviously 2015 budget process that we have to approve, or council have to approve by the end January to move forward. So then there's kind of a domino effect. We have other bylaws to follow as well. So,
Excellent.
if you have any specific questions on any of these applications,
If I can just make a comment, I reviewed this and it's just excellent. You know, as you know, I write when I think, and it was just like multiple tick, 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 tick. It's just very rounded and practical, and in terms of a movement forward, very orderly. So thank you very much. Councillor Ando?
A couple of questions.
Sure.
In the second paragraph, the first one under discussion, it says the 2015 budget will identify economies of scale and efficiencies. Do you know what those might be, or what kind of things we do?
What, you know, the 2014 budget process was basically identifying what the structure, the new structure, there was a new structure in the administration in 2014, and that we incorporated that in the budget, and that was a starting point for the village. Now, building on that process, now that we have had that structure for a year, what efficiencies and you know, cost savings that might actually come out of that, we can actually look at it and see what you know, what kind of efficiencies we can incorporate in the budget. So it was a kind of a general statement. We haven't actually gone in to see what would be those cost savings are. If there are any, we would have to do.
Thank you very much.
Through you, Madam Mayor.
Yes.
I think Ari's been a little
Modest.
we've had discussions with our manager of public works, the new manager of public works, who's been here now, I think, almost 3 months. One of the things that she's pointed out, you know, from the get-go is the levels of service, and to ensure that council understands the levels of service and is prepared to pay for whatever levels of service are. So, you know, what Hari and Nikki have been doing is, with other staff, is talking about, you know, what does our public works staff do? How do they do it? What equipment do they need to do it better? Are they doing what they ought to be doing? And should they be doing other things? So there's only X number of dollars, and there's a lot of things that people want to be done. Recently, we've had some discussions with some members of the community about other things that they'd like us to see. So the matter now is that determining what has to be done and what can be done within the budget that you're prepared to spend.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Councillor Ando?
Second question
Yes.
is, in the tax rate portion under operating budget, it says it would also enable, in the middle of the paragraph, it would also enable Village of Lions Bay to contribute to reserves annually. Are you talking about amortization, or are you talking something different, a reserve fund? Or are they the same?
Sort of the same.
Through the chair. It's been an age-old discussion about the amortization costs in the municipal environment. Ideally, the reserves that you will be contributing to, or the contribution to the capital reserves, would be equal to your amortization costs. But having said that, in a small municipality like Lions Bay, it may be a large cost impact. So therefore, we'll have to see actually within the tax structure what can we afford in terms of reserves and contribution to reserves. Lions Bay does not have a huge reserve balance for the infrastructure replacement. I mean, that was one of the things that Mr. McCradle also brought last year in terms of trying to justify the tax increase when we proposed, is to have that ability to contribute to our capital reserves, because we do have our standard increase to the labor costs, and also we have the inflationary costs as well. So over and above, anything that is left over is basically to contribute to our reserves. And so that was the rationale for doing that. But if we are to contribute amount equal to the amortization, then we are looking at much higher tax rate.
Thank you very much. I'm going to, with seeing no further questions, going to move us along to the minutes of the, well, we've already received those. Any comments about the Infrastructure Committee minutes of May 13th, 2014? Seeing none, I'm going to move us along to the tree cutting application number 50. Now, application approved. Now, Councillor McLaughlin, do you wish to report on this?
Unless there's any questions on the background to this, I think the chair of the tree committee's response is available to council and the public to review. If there's no questions, we're ready to move towards resolution on this.
Okay. If you can put forward the resolution.
Yes. Be it resolved that the Village of Lions Bay Council confirms the recommendation made in the tree committee letter dated September the 11th, 2014, referencing tree application number 50.
Okay, do I have a seconder? Thank you. Councillor Ronsley. Any discussion? Call question on the motion. All those in favor? Carried unanimously. If we can move along then to the emergency report. I'm sorry, Councillor Ando?
I have a general question about the tree committee. I'm wondering, is the tree committee the same or fall under the same terms of reference that the other committees fall under? So do they, when they meet, is it open to the public, and do they need to post it and those kinds of
Good
things?
questions. Those are really good questions.
I don't think so. It's not.
I think that those are good questions that we need to, honestly, I don't have a response.
Can we get that researched
Yeah,
and
we can.
some information back?
Yeah, that would be great. Thanks very much
Thank you.
for the question. Can I direct the question? Yeah, thank you very much to staff to research. If I can, if there's no comments from Councillor Bain on the emergency reports, it looks pretty straightforward. If I can then go forward to resolutions and to resolve to relocate our October meetings. This is under our procedures bylaw that we need to pass this resolution. That the Village of Lions Bay Council approves the relocation of October council and committee meetings to a meeting facility located outside of village boundaries, with location details to be posted in accordance with the Village of Lions Bay Council Procedures Bylaw number 453. If I can call for a mover and a seconder on that, and then I'll just speak to it. Councillor Bain and Councillor Rossi, thank you. It may be with the opening of the schools, but we don't have that certainty at this point. So we don't need anything further to stay put, but we do need this to move forward. So if I can, is there any discussion? Call question on the motion. All those in favor? Carried unanimously. Thank you so much. If I can move forward then to bylaws, fees and charges amendment bylaw number 480. And there's a request to do first, second, and third reading this evening. So I'm going to do first reading. So fees and charges amendment bylaw number 480. Call upon council for first reading. Can I have council move in second? Councillor McLaughlin and Councillor Bain. Any discussion on that? It's page 35 of your package. As it says, it is staff's recommendation that as it is non-contentious in the changes, just for people to understand. Call question on the motion. All those in favor? Carried unanimously. If I can have council please move second reading of bylaw, fees and charges bylaw number 462. Move second reading. Councillor Ando and Councillor Ronsley. Any discussion? Yes, Councillor Bain.
Yeah, I forgot I made a note on this one. I was just had a query on page 40 of 134, bottom equipment rental rates for off-site. And the note says the sound system has been removed as an off-site rental option due to the significant replacement cost of the item. Yet on page 42 of 134, we have a sound system rental rate still in place there for off-site. Am I missing
Which is
something
it?
here?
Page 42 is what's existing in the bylaw?
Oh, that's the previous?
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
I'm sorry, it's,
Page 42 is what's existing right now, and page 40 is what we're proposing to change.
I see. Thank you very much. That's clarifying too. I see I had a note there as well. Councillor Ando?
Did some of the rates go up, or were you just clarifying the units or making it more accurate?
There is,
So on Schedule 3,
yeah, page 38.
the first two changes did increase, and that's a direct reflection of the public works costs associated to those two charges. So that is locating water leak, water shut-off valve, turn water on and off, and also the Green Lakes utility trailer rental. Those are both increased based on the direct cost to public works. And then in terms of the facility rentals, there are three that went up, one that went down, and the rest stayed the same, I believe. And that's why I included the existing Schedule 6.
Which one was that?
Page 42.
Which one went down?
I think it was the drop in rates. We added a youth rate.
Which
rather
is
than the blanket.
page 40.
Yeah.
Fourth one down is the youth rate.
And also we included the reference for the municipal grant program and what the fee rate would be for waiving of fees.
Councillor Ando?
So if we are changing the rates, and I think that we should at least be open to some comments from the community, being that they probably only had the opportunity to see this since Friday. And so if we pass all three readings, then we won't be able to discuss it, we won't be able to make changes, and the community would have very little time to provide their
Comment.
input. So, in my opinion, it would be best if we only did 2 readings tonight, but I leave that to council to decide.
Okay. Could council take that under advisement? Probably good comments. So if I can, I don't see any other desire to speak. So on this second reading, I'll call question on the motion. All those in favor? Carried unanimously. I don't know if we have to go into the third reading to determine whether council is desirous of that, or whether I can just do consensus to see with that comment whether council wishes to wait for community comment on this and have it the next meeting. Yes, Councillor Ando?
So I think it would give people time. We have the first meeting in October.
Yeah.
We could do the adoption in the second meeting of October. The community center may be open for less than a week, so I don't see the rush to have to do this. That's my opinion.
Councillor Bean?
I think Councillor Ando's got a good point.
Yeah.
A concern I would have though are how about the programs starting up when they do, if they're going to pre-book it? Would that be a complication if we haven't established this yet?
Could I go to Ms. Kuntz?
You just do the disclaimer, subject to passing of the
Yeah, would
pending
that be
bylaw.
fine?
It's easy.
Yeah, okay, perfect. That would be great. Okay, if we can, through consensus, is that okay to not go forward with the third reading this evening? But we'll move ahead then to 10B, Council Procedures Bylaw number 476, draft for public release. And that is so if I can have council you move first reading, is that, I'm just looking at the, no, not just release for, oh, wonderful. Okay, so I'm going to have council to pass the motion for it to be put forward for, not to resolve to pass it first reading, but just to resolve to put it forward to the public as a draft for public release. So could I have council please move and second? Thank you, Councillor Bain and Councillor Ronsley. Any discussion? Okay, so the motion is that the council support the council procedures bylaw number 476 going forward in draft form for public release and comment. Call question on the motion. All those in favor? Carried unanimously. If we can move along then to the animal control and licensing amendment bylaw number 481. This has had considerable review of it, page 77. If I can ask council to move first reading, and this is first reading of 3 readings, and we'll examine after second reading whether we move forward. But this, as I say, has been on our table several times. But could I have council move first reading? Thank you very much, Councillor Ando. And the seconder, Councillor Bain. Any discussion? Yes, Councillor Ando.
So there was 2 points that I made at the last meeting. This is the first one. The second one was what happens if new trails are added. So,
right.
And I don't know whether we are able to account for the future or not in the bylaw. And if we're not, then that's fine. I just wanted to make sure that it was looked at and dismissed if it's not practical.
Perhaps to Ms. Kuntz.
Yeah, you're right. We can't account for future trails, so we don't know what those will be, so it poses a liability.
Thank you.
But we could certainly do another amendment if we need to.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Any further questions? Call question on the motion. All those in favor? Carried unanimously. If we can move along then to the second reading of animal control and licensing amendment bylaw number 481. Council move and second. Councillor McLaughlin and Councillor Bain. Any discussion? Yes, Councillor Ando.
I was wondering about chickens. At one time, when we first came into office in 2012, we had discussed that City of Vancouver had gone to having chickens, and I'm wondering whether or not council would be open to having chickens in the community, and then now would be the time to look at that. If we don't, that's fine. There was a concern, I remember at the time, that we were bear smart, and that time it wouldn't have been appropriate to bring in chickens because of the complications it may have to our bear smart status. But a couple years have passed since, and we're reviewing or renewing our animal control bylaw, and I'm wondering what council thinks about chickens.
I think if I can brief also our staff is that
I am opposed to chickens.
we had quite a graphic presentation, and it certainly, we have had chickens and they have been bear attractants, and they have led to real mass death of the chickens, and all the things that go with that. So if that was to come forward, to Ms. Kuntz's point, is if we were to amend that based on something coming forward from the community in an examination, but I wouldn't see that as a little thing to pop in to this bylaw. Yeah.
Remember, I think, you know, the debate of chickens is not something you want to introduce right now. I think, you know, the idea is,
It was much more fulsome.
Punt it to the next council.
Yeah.
You know, that is going to be controversial. You know, we had problems with cougars this year. We've had problems with coyotes this year, not to mention bears. I think chickens in this community is going to be a challenge, and attractants to all 3 of those, and raccoons. So if the community wants it, then perhaps the community should sometime in the future ask council to consider it. But at this point, I think it would be a challenge.
Councillor
And I
Ando?
would also ask about bees.
Bees?
And I know that one resident has asked me about bees, whether they're allowed, and I had no idea. So, and I don't know whether a bee falls under this category or whether it would be something different. So I could just put it in somebody else's hand. And
Okay, if we can note both of those, we had a beekeeper for decades, would you say? Successfully, right from our our second long-term resident in Lions Bay onward until really the last decade. Sadly, not having a beekeeper, but that could go in that discussion as well.
thank you.
Councillor Ronsley?
If it's the wish of council, I am attending the regular meeting of the North Shore Bear Smart Committee tomorrow morning at 7:30, and I will be happy to ask for an opinion on that, and if it's the desire of the council, so be it. I will do it.
Thank you very much. If I can have us move, with the understanding that we wouldn't be jumping ahead. If I can, have I called question on the first reading? I don't believe I have called question on the motion. All those in favor?
First reading you've done. Yes,
Okay,
second
second reading. Okay, thank you. If I can call, have we moved and seconded
Yes.
second reading?
Yes.
Yeah, thank you. Call question on second reading. All those in favor? Carried unanimously. And could I ask council to move forward with third reading? Thank you, Councillor Ando, and a seconder, Councillor Bain. All those in favor, there is no discussion with third reading, carried unanimously. If we can move on to correspondence, and if I can ask council to please move receipt of correspondence. Thank you. Councillor Ronsley, and a seconder, please. Councillor Bain, thank you. All those in favor of receipt? Opposed, carried unanimously. Page 81 of our package. And are there any, we begin with external correspondence. Are there any items in external correspondence that council wishes to draw our attention to? Okay, that being the case, if I can go to internal correspondence, and I'll ask council first and then go to myself. Are there any, is there any correspondence from within Lions Bay that council wishes to draw attention to? If I could, I don't normally make comment to council via email, but if I could draw your attention to R1, parking on Mountain Drive. And it's simply because I have not talked to any residents in this area at all, but I do run in this area, and had, I don't know if this was the timing or not, but have noticed the car in the ditch, but have personally noted that this area that has been described quite aptly in the resident's email is the parking in this area creates a very, what I would consider to be a serious potential car-to-car or car-to-pedestrian interface. And so it's been an area of concern that I've been aware of as I've gone upward on that curve on that hill as a jogger. And the other note in there is that I think the village should look to, in addition to the parking and the danger in that area, but is the parking poses a true slope stability, I don't know what you'd call it, but I think again it was aptly described in the resident's email that there's a ditch there and there's very little room to park, so people are parking in a way that is sloughing off the ditch, which is the side of the road, which so again the resident, I don't know when residents come before us to ask for a resident only as I think Councillor Ando is very aware, and Councillor Ronsley, and probably all of us, when we have gone to the neighborhood to ask if there's a need for that, and what the opinion is of the neighbors on that matter. But I did want to state, when I saw that, it didn't come as a surprise at all, and the photos are could have been taken randomly at any time from my perspective as somebody who, not over the summer, has been jogging, but jogs right through the 10 months of the winter there in that location. So I did want to draw that to your attention, and with all due respect to council, just say to council and to senior staff what we might look at there in regard to a potential resident-only parking area. But again, I haven't discussed this with any community members, including the fellow joggers. But when I did not email the resident that emailed with purpose, but I did email my fellow colleagues because it was of interest that that had been noted as an area of serious concern. So I don't know if there's any further comment from council. What we've done in the past is when parking issues have come forward from from community members, is we have gone to the neighborhood by sending a letter to neighbors to see what their thoughts are. And I don't know, paradoxically, it came in shortly after Mr. McGradu and I had been in a meeting and looked at parking as a whole in the village being reviewed in 2015. But I thought this coming forward and having the knowledge of that particular area, I thought that it was particularly poignant in my own mind, what a concern it poses there. So I don't know, Mr. McGradu, if you have any suggestion on this, or
You, Madam Mayor, we, as mentioned to you and to council before, we do have a parking report.
yeah.
And includes a number of items that were discussed in 2012 by council. There's no reference in there about some philosophical issues that I think council may want to dwell into. My only concern is that, you know, do we want to bring it in at this point in time? Because it involves the entire village, or deal with them, you know, one-offs, and I'm not sure dealing with one-offs is the wisest thing to do. So there are a number of areas in this community that should have no parking signs or resident-only parking signs. Facetiously, somebody said there should be signs that says you're only allowed to park in this specific area. So I think parking in Lions Bay does need some concentrated discussion. We do have a staff report, but we're not sure whether now, you know, between now and the election is the time to bring it forward.
Okay. Given sort of the side of the road infrastructure, could we ask Ms. Hogland to have a look-see on the ditch side in this area to see?
To see what?
To see when this was presented, I thought that's probably why everybody's going into the ditch there. Is that the side of the road is actually being eroded through the parking.
Okay.
I was going to speak to this later.
Later,
Is
yeah.
that
Okay.
Yeah.
We can see if the road is sloughing. Okay.
Yeah, okay. I don't know if that should. Okay, thank you very much. Any other? There being none, yeah, Councillor Bain.
Just a query on the Calvin Road washroom energy
Yes.
issue. Is any of these concerns going to be addressed in the I don't want to call it renovations of the washroom, but the work being done?
Yes.
Yes.
Excellent. Yeah. And perhaps we can receive a briefing on that, because it's very detailed and it really outlines very specific things that probably occurred to each council member as a concern as the review of that note happened. So thank you very much for that.
It'll be in Nikki's next report.
Excellent. Okay, anything else there? Okay, I'm going to move us along then to new business and 129. Which is the community facility rentals. Here we go. And this is a policy that is before us for approval by resolution. So the purpose of the community facility rentals policy is to provide guidelines for the rental of the Lions Bay Community Hall, kitchen, and village meeting rooms according to the event descriptions and rental rates as listed in fees and charges, bylaw 462. And so each council, I imagine each council member has had an opportunity to read through this fully. And it may be that we pass by resolution tonight, or it's a policy that also, because the bylaw is being put up for review, that we put up the policy in tandem for review as well. Would council be in favor of going ahead in that manner at this time, or do you want to move forward to resolution? I see some confusion, so we can move forward to resolution. And yes.
The policy's been, there was a recommendation at the last council meeting that the policies were circulated publicly then, so they've been up for.
Oh, thank you very much. That's wonderful information. So let me ask council then to move and second. Thank you, Councillor McLaughlin, and a seconder, Councillor Bain. Any discussion? No discussion seen. Call question on the motion. All those in favor? Carried unanimously. If I can move along then to refunds and cancellations, page 133, and it sounds like this has also been up. Thank you very much, Ms. Kuntz. So with that information, could I call for council to move and second the resolution before us for the policy of refunds and cancellations to be adopted by council? Councillor Ronsley, thank you. As a mover and a seconder, please. Councillor Bain, thank you. Any discussion? Councillor Ando?
My feeling on this is that it's becoming a little bit restrictive, and that it's not really the Lions Bay way. It's setting up a lot of guidelines that we haven't had before, and I haven't heard from staff that this has been a big problem, so I'm wondering why we're tightening everything up so much that it's making it. So
if we can, through Mr. McGrather to Ms. Kuntz, or if I could make it a little overview stab at this.
Well,
yeah.
I think
Mr.
the simple one is that I think the comments that were made earlier about the tree bylaw being specific should stand on all our regulations, that as soon as you start this slippery slope. I fully understand that what is the Lions Bay way. I would argue though that there have been challenges in the past. What we're trying to do is to make sure everybody clearly understands the regulations. This is a policy, so therefore, it is not a bylaw. So the idea is that, people understand what the rules and regulations are. If there's, somebody stubs their toe or there's a problem, it's a policy, and I think what we can do is, then address it. But I think what we're trying to do is to say, okay, here's what needs to be done.
I think it can support staff in saying that this is how we guide ourselves, and so staff can feel confident when they're guiding a situation. But as Mr. McGrather says, with exceptional situations, acting exceptionally.
What we're trying to do is, as much as we've been, I think, helping out, various organizations in the past, is that it's become very expensive. Staff have become very expensive movers. That's not what they were hired for. And I think the challenge we have is that, as we talked about earlier, is, you know, we are trying to look at what work we have to accomplish. And so all the changes in policies that, you know, that we're bringing forward, that Mandy's bringing forward, is to try to bring some rigor to the organization. Doesn't mean that, you know, that it's going to be followed to the, you know, to the degree, but, you know, we're trying to bring more rigor in. And some of the things about the rental policies, things have gone missing, people have just borrowed it, we've had to replace it, some things have come back damaged, some people, you know, we've had to go chase it. It's not a big problem, but it is a problem. And what we're trying to do, and Mandy's, you know, moving forward, is bring in rigor.
An example of that, and I think probably Councillor Andrew, you're aware of this, is we've had, you know, a concert in process where we haven't got the microphone because the microphone's gone missing in action. These examples have not come forward, and staff has worked on their own on this, but I think if we can have that where we're not putting staff in the position where we say, well, for you we'll rent it out, but for you they're making some kind of almost personality decision versus having an orderliness to it. Yes, Councillor Ronsley?
I guess I would just add to all that it is indeed for Lions Bay, and it is, I see it as a fairness. It's a fairness to the taxpayer, it's a fairness to the citizens, it's a fairness to the office, and by having a policy, it does guide us and what is fair, and I know some of these problems have come forward. The microphone is a case in point, and a few other things. So I'm pleased that in terms of fairness, we're getting them. You know, rather than we're being rigorous or we're being rigid or we're being, you know, it's a good thing, I think.
But it's a guide for sure. Councillor Ando?
Something like, say, the spring arts recital. Is that run through the events committee? And so they would have to put in their requisition at the beginning of the year, and so that they get a waiver on the hall, and so that they get a waiver on the labor to set up, and if not, it's going to cost them $400. Are we expecting them to pay for a community event?
It's a community event.
Right, which the whole community benefits from. That's why I'm wondering how it all works.
If I can first respond, and then to Mr. McGradu, they have always been exempted, no matter what the fee is, whether it's un petit peu or whatever. But Mr. McGradu?
Madam Mayor, again, we emphasize rigor. You can always exempt things or organizations, but you know, one of the items that was placed in the budget, the executive summary, was the municipal grant process, because frankly in the past is being a hodgepodge. We tried to bring some rigor into it last year. I don't think it was communicated well, it was communicated late. That's why we want to bring it in earlier. So people do know the costs, and one of the comments that was made is that this is for the entire community, and I've had people say, well, I don't go to things, and so therefore why should my taxpayers go for this? You know, and this happens not just in Lions Bay but everywhere, saying, look, I don't do this, so therefore why should I pay for it? As long as everybody knows the rules up front, council can make whatever decisions they want, but at least everybody knows what the rules are.
Okay. Thank you very much. I think that's very helpful. And in fact,
I'm
sorry.
With respect to the policy, just to sign off what's already been said at the table. The other thing about having the policies in place for staff is it's helping to fill in some of the corporate knowledge that's lacking in the office, and it really provides a baseline for the staff to move forward on how we should be addressing things consistently among residents and among requests.
Thank you very much, Ms. Kuntz. Okay, with that, are there any further speakers? Call question on the resolution. All those in favor? Carried unanimously. Thank you very much. And if then we can go to public questions and comments. And I see 3 hands. I saw Ms. Public Cover first, Mr. Wilkie second, Mr. Stone third, and Ms. Dyer fourth, and Ms. Conlon fifth. If everybody can contain their comments to 3 minutes, 3 minutes at the beginning, 3 minutes at the end, and we have a timekeeper. And so we'll start with Ms. Public Cover.
Okay. Forgive me, Mayor, you're going to have to step out.
Oh, okay, thank you very much, not a problem. And I'm going to pass it over to Councillor Bain.
Don't start the clock till she gets
You are,
Oh, wait.
you are forgiven.
One second. September.
My first comment is I'm really gratified to see that a resident can come forward and in 2 weeks get a resolution to a question about trees. We have patiently been coming month after month after month, and honestly feel that we've been treated with a certain amount of disdain. We've been just trying to get a resolution to our question. Many of our documents have been buried, not seen the light of day, and I just want that out there. Now, in terms of the trees at the south end on Isleview, Mr. McGrady, those were cut at the same time. I realize you won't take our word for it, but my husband did provide a point A to point B accounting of all the trees that were cut. Nearly 40 trees were cut. And then finally, I'd like to ask, what is this going to look like next? I hear about some remedies that are done down on Lions Bay Avenue, but what about for Isleview? Our neighbors say that it looks like there was a plane crash there. And, you know, that was a really lovely area until all the cutting occurred. And so I believe we submitted Nelson's inventory from point A to point B. If not, I can give that to you. But nobody wants a quicker resolution to this than we do. And we've only been patiently coming month after month after month for this. So that's my comment.
Thank you.
Is there going to be an answer maybe or to my question?
Mr. McGrady, will you
I'm not sure,
address that?
what's the specific question? What happens next? Is that the question, or?
Well, no.
Remedy, I guess.
You know, you're going to have arborists come and compare the top of a cut. That seems like a really subjective thing. And are they going to, you know, shinny up the other trees to see if the aging on the top of that tree matches the aging down at the end of the, you know, south side? I'm not sure how that's done. There's new growth coming up that's about so tall. But I'm not sure how we're going to get some resolution to this. And then after you decide if this is on, you know, property or these have been cut, I'm just worried about this being deflected and turfed in a way that it'll disappear again, like some of our comments have.
Do I understand you're asking for a resolution, a remedy for what's happened?
Well, that's part two, but part one is, I'm not sure how anyone could come along after 5.5 months and determine precisely when these trees were cut. And I'm worried this is a misdirection of the issue. And you would literally have to climb to the top of all the trees that were cut to compare the weathering to that at the south end. And I'm not sure how you can honestly do that. Maybe the arborists can. But then how is this going to look when all this is said and done? I want to know how this is going to look.
So, can I add some clarity then, maybe?
If I may suggest that Councillor Bain be the chair on this because of the...
Okay.
Go ahead.
Dr. Broughton or the Strata BS 837 or whatever it is ever denied cutting those trees to the south? Has that question been asked, whether he's responsible for having those trees cut?
Mr. Mayor, I've just received an email from Steve's Trees in writing that says, addressed to me, I just received it, no trees were cut south of the Poville property by my company.
How would you know where the property line was if a survey wasn't done in advance?
That's not a sworn testimony.
Okay, so,
I
Mr.
don't
Mayor,
get that.
Mr.
This
Mayor,
is
the
just-
question that was posed was what are we going to do? What am I going to do next? I'm going to. I've received this now. We'll wait till we get the survey. I will be speaking with Steve's Trees company and getting clarification of what this means. We will then try to determine whether those trees, so he is saying that his company did not cut any trees off the property. We will need to confirm exactly what, where the property line was, and then have him confirm that with me. At that point in time, if the trees, I think at this point in time, I will need to most likely talk to a solicitor, I guess, to see how we want to pursue this. At this point in time, we've got it may need to be notarized, whatever, I don't know. But at this point in time, we have a company that says that they have not cut it. So therefore, I would probably want to seek legal advice on where we want to go now.
Right. Councilor Rando.
So has Dr. Broughton and the Strata said that they have not cut the trees? Is that, are they on record as saying they have not cut the trees? Have we asked, as the village, asked them if they are responsible for cutting the 5 to 6 trees to the south of the property line?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, the question was asked, were any trees cut south of the Poville property by Steve's Trees? I've now received a written statement by the owner of Steve's Trees that says they did not.
So
So
now
therefore,
we're getting caught up in the words again.
This is not a political science.
Excuse me.
We're asking, maybe it wasn't Steve's Trees. Maybe it was another company that cut the trees. So I think we need to ask the person who cut the trees to go on record to say that he did or did not have any trees cut south of the property line.
Okay, we could
But would
post.
the property line, forgive me, but would the property line have been evident at the time the cutting was done? The survey wasn't done and the trees weren't marked with survey tags until after all the trees were cut. And I have to tell you, Steve's Trees has suffered, his business has suffered because of this. Everyone on our street has gone to someone else who used to go to him. He has suffered because of this.
Mr. Mayor, I would find it challenging that a owner of a company would falsify a statement. And particularly as was stated by public cover, that this could affect their livelihood. I will need to most likely speak with a solicitor, find out how do we move forward with this. I think this has gone beyond, and I understand that other trees are of concern. The only concern that at this point in time that I'm going to be dealing with are the trees south of the property line, and to try to determine who cut them. And I think if my understanding is that the trees that were in the tree company that was engaged with Steve's Trees to cut on March 31st, April 1st, and 2nd. If somebody else cut that previously, I don't know. Whether we're going to go to an arborist and ask, can they determine whether those trees were cut in 2014 or before? And that's something I will need to find out, because we don't have any knowledge. The surveyors don't have any knowledge. So we will need to find somebody who has that knowledge.
Well, I think
So,
sorry, go ahead.
go ahead. So I guess where we're at right now is this is going to take further investigation, and it's not going to be dropped necessarily until we have satisfaction.
Well, I guess the question will be is what satisfaction does council wish? You know, they've received you know, do you want a notarized statement from Steve's Trees? What evidence do you want that in fact Steve's Trees, who was the company that was engaged by the Strata Corporation, didn't cut those trees?
But I guess Councillor Ando's point is, could it be that another company acted on behalf, or on behalf of somebody else, which we don't know at this point?
Well, I can ask the question, you know, was any other tree company engaged by the Strata Corporation to cut those trees on those dates? Is that going to satisfy council?
Would you be satisfied with that?
And Dr. Broughton could be asked, the president of the Strata could be asked whether or not he was responsible for cutting those trees, and get him on record to say yes he did or no he did not.
So to end this, to bring this to conclusion, the question will be posed is, was any other company engaged in cutting those trees on March 31st, April 1st, and or 2nd?
No,
Or in that vicinity?
Councillor Ando?
that's not what Mr. Ando said.
We're being awfully specific.
Well, we need to be specific because, you know, this is, you know, every time we try to answer it, another question pops up. So to satisfy this, the question was asked, did Steve's Trees cut those, the trees on March 31st, April 1st, or 2nd? The answer was no. You're now asking the question, did the Strata Corporation, through Dr. Broughton, engage any other company to cut those trees?
Or are they responsible for cutting any trees south of Mr. Powell's property?
On those dates? Or sometime in the past, or was it BC Hydro, was it
In the spring of this year?
in the spring of, okay, we will ask that question.
2014?
2014.
Okay, we will ask that question.
Good. Councillor McLaughlin.
To the acting mayor, quite candidly, a conclusion to this matter cannot be drawn quickly enough. The council's role is to opine based on the best facts available. We now have the almost leading finalized facts. We are coming to a conclusion. I think the public has to accept that. But we're not going to keep going asking, answering, and digging around again. We're coming to a conclusion here, and using the interim CAO's last example of his work, I'm quite sure that he will come with a final recommendation next meeting, and I would look forward to concluding the matter.
We'll attempt to have those two answers, hopefully by the end of this week.
Good. Thank you.
Thank you.
I think that closes this for now. Good. Thank you. We'll bring the mayor back in.
What do you want? Sorry? Would you wait till the meeting's open, please? Thank you for coming. Introduce himself.
Thank you very much, Councillor Bain. Okay, next, Mr. Wilkie.
Council, I've come across something a little disturbing here, reading the water reports. Permit to operate. It talks about biannual flushing on the entire distribution system, daily turbidity tests, annual chemical testing sources. Chlorine residuals must be recorded daily at locations approved by Vancouver Coastal Health, and submit weekly water biological testing. Can this council tell me when the last time the system was flushed entirely?
Oh,
Entirely means storage tanks, the entire system, right through.
You know, I'll defer to Mr. McGrady, but I don't believe that we can identify that. We can say that Ms. Hogland, and this is where I join with council in really applauding Ms. Hogland in coming on board and being orderly in the planning process and what needs to be done, and also taking a very systematic approach to the flushing, because you begin with a tender approach so that you don't blow out your system. You have to discover and experiment how it's going to respond, and that's what Ms. Hogland has reported to us over.
Can I continue before
yes, sure.
this runs out? There was also, we were talking about land use. I would like to see a moratorium put on any land use discussion until such time as we actually do a peak water study. I mentioned last May about peak water study, and well, today we haven't initiated anything of that sort. After listening to the land use master plan meeting last week, it was also mentioned that in 2008 and 2011 we seem to have these development meetings when all we need to do is have staff, committee, or council and the residents have discussion. That's all that we're asked to do in the official community plan, is have discussion. We can take previous reports and say we've discussed what we have previously in a discussion and move on. I think money would be better spent than trying to relocate or identify aquifers, okay, because I've read and I've spoke out once before about water and the sourcing for well water, and I was told that they're cyanide-based or
arsenic.
Can you tell me where Furry Creek gets their water and the Porta Cove?
I'm not sure whether Furry Creek is on.
They're on the aquifers.
Yeah,
yeah. And Porta Cove could not reach peak water, so the what do you call it? Little Squamish Regional District shut them down from going ahead with their development. Okay, and that's why I say it's important for us. If we had somebody come in here in 2005, identify locations for us to drill wells, we should have at least made an attempt to do that. Sure, it was $60,000 at the time. I'm sure it's over 100 now. But until we have sufficient water going forward, we should stop talking about densification, because all it will do is plummet property values.
Thank you, Mr. Wilkie, for that information. I think Ms. Dyer, pardon me, Mr. Stone, and then Ms. Dyer, and then Ms. Conlon.
First question is, I'd like to know when this council is going to hire a full-time village manager. We as residents are getting tired of being put off and not getting our questions properly answered, as you have all witnessed tonight. The last meeting I asked Mrs. Broughton directly.
Mayor Broughton, yeah.
Mrs. Broughton is okay. Mrs. Broughton, that what evidence she had.
Mr. Stone, just
Mayor Broughton.
That's right. That's where I'm presiding as mayor.
Madam Mayor.
Thank you. Thank you.
What evidence she had when she told council that the provincial grant was amended, and she could not answer, which means that there wasn't any evidence because the provincial government doesn't have any proposal. So, and then the second question was, why did council proceed with the project without getting approval from the provincial government for deleting or doing something regarding the 726 square feet of new activity space, which was the key element in obtaining the grant? And that question has not been answered. Thank you, Mr. Consultant. And the other question had to deal with the rescinding of the 5-year financial plan. Our procedure bylaw very specifically states that the bylaws can only be amended during the first 3 readings, and the council had passed already the 3rd reading. And council violated the procedure bylaw, and I question on what grounds, and I still don't have an answer. Do you have an answer for me, Mrs. Broughton? Oh, sorry, Mrs. Mayor.
It's because Mrs. Mayor's fine. It's just because that's the role I'm presiding in. Looking at the procedure bylaw, we have gone over the procedure bylaw, and the procedure bylaw has that if we have passed third reading, as you know, no change can be made after third reading. Therefore, you have to rescind third reading, go back to second reading, make any changes, and then go forward.
There's no provision for rescinding in our bylaw.
If I might say that the research has been done, is that correct, Ms. Kuntz? And I believe that at least on one occasion, and then again it's come up in tonight's package, that this has been communicated to you. And it's something that it might be helpful for you to consult the Roberts Rules of Order.
It's not in Roberts.
Okay.
This is not rules.
Oh, okay,
These
it
are
might not be, but
procedure bylaw. It's not
procedure.
in there, Mrs. Brown. And you said in that meeting on
Pardon me?
May 8th.
It's been answered, so I'm just
It
being
has not
guided.
been
I'm being
answered.
guided by.
Because you can't answer it right now. I'm asking.
I'm sorry, I am answering it, and I just must say, Mr. Stone,
Sure.
your time is up at this point, but I'm not using that except to say that this question has been dutifully answered. I have been in meetings for years, but I want to say that I did not, and council did not say that that has been the usual. We had our staff do the research. Staff has researched it and has made comment to you and provided the answer. There are answers that residents simply don't agree with or do agree with. Hopefully there's both. Hopefully more agreement than disagreement. But when you disagree with the answer, it's still, because it's come through both council and staff, and that's come forward to you, I'm going to ask you to retire that question. But
I'm not going to retire that question, okay, Madam Mayor, because
I'm going to ask you now.
It's very specific, and it states clearly that you can't do it. And you wrote that bylaw, and you're refusing to admit it. You said at that meeting on May 8th that if you could not provide evidence or any other reasoning, that you would revoke the amending of that 5-year plan.
If I can,
You haven't provided
if I
any
can
evidence.
excuse
You just
you,
talk.
Mr. Stone, I'm going to just ask you to be respectful within the chamber. Thank you so much.
Oh, I didn't get an answer about the 726 square feet.
We
I
all.
believe this has been asked and answered before.
It hasn't been answered.
Mr. Stone, I'm going to move on to Ms. Dyer and then Ms. Conlon. Ms. Dyer?
Hi.
Welcome.
This is my first time speaking to council in this capacity, and so I'm really here just to ask a few questions. I was the author, as you may know, of the letter regarding the parking up in the Mountain Drive area of Lions Bay. And I just really, my question is what the procedure is. Is there some way I can facilitate the process of getting parking changed if that is something that we are able to do, to lobby for as a citizen of Lions Bay? This has been an ongoing problem for many years, and it's not really evident for people who live below, but where I live, the popularity of our hiking trails has massively increased, and we all, I have no problem with the hikers. We all love. This is why we live in Lions Bay, so that we can enjoy nature. But the problem with the parking is becoming extreme, and so the reason I wrote this letter is because I feel that there are two specific problems that are specific to this region, as opposed to the comment that you made about addressing parking throughout the village. And the two concerns I have is I actually feel that someone could be at risk. Their life could be at risk with the traffic volume. We are seeing literally 100 or more hikers go up our mountain every weekend now, and it's going during the week as well. They park at the school, and then they park above the school, and then they start to park all the way down Mountain Drive and up my street, and the parking is very treacherous. So that was the first concern, which was a concern for life and limb, and the second concern was this particular piece of village property, which is the ditch in which these people are parking, and they're grinding their cars in, and I sent you some pictures of some of the cars that have gone actually into the ditch and tipped over, but But my point is more that this is a ditch that it actually, water runs along every winter with great turbidity, and it's directing the water away from the houses below the street. My house is above the street, but the houses below the street traditionally would be subject to this water, and the tires from these vehicles are destroying this ditch. And so I feel that it would be a wise move to protect the village property and to protect the health and safety of the residents of their area to do something about the parking in this area as separate from the parking issue throughout the village. So my question to you quickly was is there anything I can do to facilitate this process?
Mm-hmm. Mr. McGratto, do you want to make comment?
Well,
because you've been given some direction.
Madam Mayor, what we'll do now that it's been raised is that, we're going to check the sloughing on the bank. You've raised the issue about, potential life safety. So we'll get the manager of public works to take a look at it, maybe we'll see what we can do.
And at any time, if someone wants a little tour of the area or something, they can just be in touch with me, and I'm happy to give any further information.
Okay.
And I have spoken to the neighbors in the area. I wrote the letter with the approval of my direct neighbor, Bill Kimmett, and he added his voice to it.
Thank you very much, Ms. Dyer. Councillor Ronsley?
I do sit on second in that committee for parking.
Oh.
I don't live on the street.
No.
I do know it very well. I thank you for bringing it to our attention. It is indeed a real problem, and I'm glad you came to council and wrote that letter. And I have every confidence that it will be handled with expedition.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Ms. Conlon?
Thank you. I would like to thank CAO McGratty for reminding council that they should enforce their bylaws. I appreciate hearing that. At the same time, I would like to tell 3 councillors how shameful that they did not follow that advice tonight by forgiving, on a without prejudice basis, BC Strata 815, owned by the mayor and her husband, for not getting a tree survey done in advance as per the bylaw relating to the Isle View tree cutting issue.
Thank you. I won't comment. I don't know. Yeah, thank you. That is everything this evening. So I'm going to ask to move adjournment. Can I please invite, thank you, Councillor McLaughlin and Councillor Ronsley, and call question on the motion. All those in favor? Carried unanimously. Thank you so much.
Susan, have you got a minute?
Yeah.